Shadowe Shoot Shot. Wrestling fans, this is I was about to say Top Wrestlers Talk on Professional Wrestling. This is Shadowe Shoot Shot. We're here, we're back, and we're doing an episode, man. And I can just say this, is that we are shooting. We're going to shoot on some people today. This episode right here, we're going to talk about Mr. Mcmahon's, the Netflix docuseries. And we're going to jump right into it. So all I can say to you, all the wrestling fans, is like and subscribe to this network, to this podcast, to the show, because we're going to bring it to you. I'm going to bring you some high energy. Why? Because it's like I took my medicine, I took my pills, and I'm a little bit hyped up right now, son, because the pain that I usually feel, I'm not feeling so bad right now. So when I can do it, I will do it, and I'm going to do it today, right now. Shadowe Shoot Shot. Let's go. Oh, yeah, Step Brothers all day, every day. This is the Shadow, Mr. Storm. We're here on the Shadow Knows Network, and I just want to say to all the fans, the wrestling fans that have found or discovered the Shadow or rediscovered the Shadow, yes, I am back, and we're going to be doing this thing and stuff. We're definitely going to take time today to answer the questions to some of the people on the boards and stuff that have been leaving messages and wanted to some questions answered. It'll be kind of like running the gauntlet, like we used to do on the Top Wrestling Show. So we're going to do that. But jumping right into things is the Netflix series, docuseries, Mr. Mcmahon. Overall, I started the first episode. I was 10 minutes in and I turned it off. I was like, I can't watch this. This is like trash. This is garbage. A lot of puff piece. A lot of people just saying, blah, blah, this, blah, blah, that. And, you know, you have to go all the way back to the legacy of the company. So once I started watching got to episode 2 and 3 and everything, and they showed the legacy of the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, Mr. McMahon, his father, I learned some things that I didn't even know, or I heard rumors about, you know, his upbringing and how he had a troubled life, you know, bringing up. And it was kind of like interesting just to see, I'll say right off the top, how Vince McMahon showed his dad that I can do this and better than you. And he did. He proved it. And it was interesting to see throughout the series how Shane McMahon tried so hard to prove to his father, to get his father's approval. That was one of the key things that I did take away on that. And I got a lot of mad respect for Shane McMahon. Because it's hard getting your dad's approval. It's hard to get, you know, your dad to just like really kind of accept the, you know, like, oh yeah, this is my son. I'm so proud of him. He's done, you know, some great things and everything else like that. So it was interesting to kind of see that with them, and the interaction with them, and of course a lot of people don't remember how Shane McMahon, like when he had a match. Yeah. He went hardcore. He went all in. And it was like, no matter what wrestler he wrestled with, and no matter how they shot on him, how they would go stiff on him, Shane took it and he get back in the ring. I do feel bad about the fact that Shane McMahon's last appearance where he got injured. I feel bad about that. But sticking with the documentary in itself, it's one thing that bothers me that we're going to get into a little bit, and that is Dave Meltzer. And to really just kind of identify what value you could put on this series is the fact that Dave Meltzer was in it. I didn't just see his name on as a producer, but I did see some guys that were in that spectrum, in that circle of, these are guys that are fanboys that love wrestling and want to write wrestling and want to be a part of wrestling. But these are not guys that put in the work, the blood, sweat, and tears in this business to really solidify themselves as people that really know the business. This is someone's view and perspective on the business in itself and telling their own story. So to just kind of bring it to all together, I really feel like this was other people's perspective on Vince McMahon, and whether it was negative or positive, it was other people's perspective. And it really just kind of felt like Dave Meltzer was like the damn narrator for this fucking show. And it just really irked me and bothered me because it's like, I'm just gonna say, man. Let me just go ahead and shoot.
Yeah, just to be real with you, Shadowe.
I gotta fucking shoot.
Yeah.
I'm a guy that grew up watching wrestling. I'm a guy that wanted to become a professional wrestler. I'm a guy that sought out and found someone to teach me to become a professional wrestler. And I've told this story before. Mondo Guerrero, generational wrestler, taught me how to become a professional wrestler. Then I worked with Bill and Jesse and the Wrestling School of Hard Knocks. I worked with T.C. Martin in Las Vegas. I worked with Buffalo Jim in Las Vegas. I worked with a lot of guys in this industry and worked on a lot of different shows and stuff and promotions. And no, I've never made it to like the WWE or AWA or any of those groups back in those days. I did do a pay-per-view called Fight Zone. We'll get to that later. But I will say this. I've been out for a couple of weeks, several weeks. And I've been out for one reason, my health. I've had a lot of health issues, and I've had some health issues for decades. I've got back issues. This comes from a lot of things in life, but a big part of that was professional wrestling. I've got C3, C4, and L4, L5, L6 injuries. I got spinal stenosis, and I got neurological disorder. I walk with a cane now. I have high moments, low moments. This is a good high day, and I'm going to maximize all my opportunities to share with you, the wrestling fans. So there's times where I will be MIA, and there'll be times where I can't do this. And when I'm able to do this, I'm going to just tell it real. I'm going to keep it real. No kayfabe. I'm just going to shoot on everything. And I will say this. When it comes to Dave Meltzer, he's a fucking mark. This is a guy that is a wrestling fan. This is a guy when they did the whole thing about the steroids thing and everything. I'm not going to say that he took steroids, but I will say this. You look at Vince McMahon's body and look at Dave Meltzer's body. You ask yourself a question. That's all I'll say about that. Second, I will say this. I can kind of blame myself on the levels on where some people in the industry are because I was the only thing going back in the 90s. As much as you can watch Who Killed WCW and you can watch Mr. McMahon, I can say this. In the 90s, there was Squared Circle, Talk on Pro Wrestling on CRN, the cable radio network. There were no podcasts. There were no YouTubes. There were no Twitters. There were no nothing. There was just Squared Circle, Talk on Pro Wrestling. And then there was the Dirt Sheets. And the Dirt Sheets was Wade Keller, Dave Meltzer, and Mike effing Leno, who I befriended. I brought onto the show multiple times. I let him come on and do segments on my show. And there was one person that told me something, and I'll never forget why, because it's like at some points, I'm a nice guy, and sometimes I kind of I shouldn't listen to the heart. I should listen to the head, where I brought Mike Leno onto the show. And I made him a part of the show, and he backstabbed me and tried to steal my spot. I brought Dave Meltzer on the show, and I let him be highlighted on the show. Brian Alvarez was just a wrestling fan tuning into Squared Circle, Talk on Pro Wrestling. Brian Alvarez became partners or friends or worked with Dave Meltzer, and that is where they are today.
Yeah.
But I put the Dirt Sheet, the Observer, on the map on a lot of levels. Now, he had a fan base. He had a fan following. But you're talking about my ratings on the cable radio network being right under Howard Stern, where he was getting a 0.9, I was getting a 0.7 or 0.7.5 or 0.75. So I will just say that I helped a lot of these guys get their name out there before there was the social media that broke out. And I can name a lot of other people, but I will just say this, is that Dave Meltzer is a fanboy. He is and has always been a fanboy. Has he ever worked in the ring? Has he ever put in the time and effort? Has he had any injuries? And has he ever discovered what real storytelling is when it comes to professional wrestling? No, he hasn't. So he's a fan. He's a mark. That's what he is. That's what he'll always be. and I'll shoot on him. Why? I don't care, man. I'm just going to keep it real. So when I see him on this thing about Vince McMahon giving his opinion and his stats and his quotes and everything else about ratings and box office and attendance and all this other kind of stuff, it's like, dude, stop it. That's about as much he should contribute to anything other than wrestling in the ring or a wrestling promotion. And it's funny, I heard 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff, and they were talking about someone had put out there that Dave Meltzer secretly owns 3% of AEW. And it's, whether it's true or not, whatever, all I can say is this: he's a mark for AEW. He's a mark for what AEW's product is. He's a mark for what they do in the ring in AEW. Where be it trash, where be it dangerous, where be it people are injured and hurt, he won't say a bad thing about AEW. And that therein lies the question. Why?
Now, here before we go, because we are going to learn some kind of verbal things, because I know this has popped up with a couple of shows. When you say Mark, now you and I know Mark, but let's assume somebody out there doesn't know what Mark is. Shadowe, let them know what a Mark is.
All right, plain and simple. A mark is just, it comes down to, like, if you're a con man and you see someone, say, standing on the corner, and you look at him up and down and you say, I can get this guy for everything he owns. That's a mark. When you look at someone and you can identify them as someone that will believe, hey, guess what? I got property in the Atlantic Ocean and it's floating and you can have it for $100. And someone says, oh, really? I'll take it. That's a mark. A mark is someone that believes any hype that you feed them. And look, in wrestling, I've been a mark, and we've all been marks. We mark out 4 things of storylines. If the storyline is good enough and sells you on it and you buy into it, you're a mark. But at the same time, you can also be a mark for a person or a product. Now, the person, you could just say, like, I know people, I won't name names, but I know people that are marks for CM Punk. No matter what he does or did, they loved him regardless. There are marks in all areas of the world of sports, entertainment, or sports in general. When a product, like when WCW, and look, worked with Jody Hamilton. I've worked with WCW for many years on the radio show. We did a lot of promotions for WCW. But guess what? That never put me in a position to where I would not criticize WCW. And I said when WCW was trash and terrible. And I said when WWE was trash and terrible. Marks love something and you can't change their mind regardless. Sometimes they send you a wrestler. I've interviewed some of the greatest wrestlers from WWE and WCW, and that didn't change my perspective that I shared genuinely on if something was wrong. And this is the difference between me and a lot of people that do their shows. The podcasters out there. I know what it takes to do it in the ring. I've done it. I understand storytelling in the ring. I've done it. I've learned from a legend, a generational wrestler, old school wrestler in the Guerreros. So I know when it comes to wrestling, hip toss, backdrop, clothesline, rest hold. Let the crowd absorb it. Now, work the arm, in the corner, arm drag, arm bar, sell it. Telling a story. Why I'm working on the arm, what I'm doing, and the moves I'm doing all correlates into working the arm and telling a story. There's a lot that goes into professional wrestling. There's a lot that you need to understand in professional wrestling. Or you're a fan that just enjoys the product. I enjoy the wrestler because he's very popular. I like the moves that he does in the ring. And the wrestlers that get over well is the wrestlers that know how to tell a story in the ring. Those guys that we call legends. And that's the difference between guys that talk about wrestling and that mark out for their favorite wrestler. And they go crazy. They don't say nothing negative about it.
Yeah.
When you got Swerve Strickland, who's a great worker, He's proven that he can work his ass off, taking staples to his body and needles to his face and hitting him, getting dropped on cinder blocks. It's like, bro, what are you doing? What are you doing? This is not like Mick Foley stuff. This is not like ECW stuff. And ECW was some hardcore stuff, but it was a different type of brand. What AEW is just trying to trigger reaction, and it's not wrestling. But I mean, I've jumped into a whole tangent and stuff, and I know we're
Yeah, yeah.
talking about McMahon, and it just I just
It's
got set off with the Dave Meltzer thing, man.
it's all right, Shadow, because like I said again, we knew this was going to be a controversial subject when we ended up taking this through. Look, all 6 episodes. Look, again, we're here to give the real, and I've got to be honest with you. Miss Vince McMahon was trying to base off of a little bit of sympathy on some of the stuff, and he's done a lot of things behind the scenes that I'm personally myself I can't just have sympathy for. You know, the man's been a scumbag, and he's been a scumbag for a very long time. And to be quite honest with you, most people with the last name McMahon have been scumbags, and they prove it. They care about themselves. And in the process of this, it comes out where you see a lot of the low level stuff that he did. Now, look, is he a businessman? Yes, he is. You cannot be a good human being, yet you can do your professional job extremely well. He's done it better than most people. But has he done harm to people? Everywhere that he has been. Whether they want to brush the steroid thing under the mat, whether they want to talk about the abuses and the allegations and all the rest of this stuff, you know, it's all there. There's a part of it that's extremely the amount of affairs that this guy has had. It's all right there to point that this is not a very good human being. Is he a great businessman? Yes. Human being? No. That pushes us into the Hogan scenario where they had Hulk Hogan. And again, I've seen this on forums. You and I were laughing about this before we got on. If Hulk Hogan's lips are moving, chances are he's probably lying.
Yeah.
In the last 6 months, he has shown another tale that he's done from a couple of years ago that got him banned from the WWE, and he's popped in and done it again. This guy is, yeah, of course he's down with Vince because Hulk Hogan is a scumbag, and he's the biggest scumbag right next to the guy. And if I noticed in this documentary, they didn't have Jesse Ventura in this documentary. And everyone knows what Hogan did when it came to unionizing. Hulk Hogan's a selfish human being, and he's a piece of crap.
Yeah.
And I don't care that he said, "Eat your prayers, do your fight." He did everything other than what he was. This was a low ball puff piece. There wasn't some hard journalistic crap that they hit him with. This was a thing. Look, I noticed that when they barely mentioned Brock Lesnar in any of these kind of allegations and crap. This was a puff piece.
Yeah.
This was a
Well,
piece. The Rock was very quiet on a lot of things. Cody Rhodes was quiet on a lot of things. John Cena was quiet on a lot of things. The only person that gave the real was Tony Atlas. That was the only person that I saw when we were doing this that was actually speaking real things. And it's like he ain't got nothing to lose. But Booker T, as much as I love Booker T, Booker T's mouth was shut on a lot of that stuff too. These guys are looking at am I going to have some retaliatory things come down the line on me? I
yeah.
didn't see a lot of hard hitting stuff, Shadow. That's what disappointed me about this. Is if you do a documentary, be real with it. Don't make it a puff piece because that's something that they just could have put on the WWE Peacock network, or they could have ran later on. But
Yeah.
this was not the place for a documentary, man.
Look, I agree with you. This was not like, oh yeah, this is real like beyond the mat stuff. This was again, as I stated, when you got a piece like Dave Meltzer on it, don't expect to get the truth. Don't expect to get 100% behind the scenes. No kayfabe. This
Yeah.
was a kayfabe show, on a lot of levels. They exposed Vince for stuff or whatever and try to make him look bad and everything else like this. And look, and I'll just be honest. Look, Vince McMahon is and has been since it was went from the Worldwide Wrestling Federation to the World Wrestling Federation to WWE. He is a character. He never came out of character. He is and was the same guy he is. I don't know the guy personally, so I can't tell you 100%. But like as far as I know, as far as television and the business itself, Vince is Vince. There is no what you see on TV and you've seen on TV for years and years and generation exploitation of women, the way they degrade black people or other races, Latino people. That is Vince McMahon. That is a product that he offered. You were either willing to accept it or you weren't. And I'll go back to me, myself personally, and what I did, my part in the business. It was I got contacted about a tour, 6-month tour in Europe, and I think RVD was going, Louis Piccoli went, couple of guys went, and it was like a big moment for guys to like really put their name out there. And at the time, I was different, unique, and I was offered an opportunity because there was a black guy that did martial arts in the ring. So I was jumping off the ropes and doing all the stuff that you see guys do now. And I was doing different things. So that was it. Now, the only problem with that was I was pulled to the side and I was told, it's like, you got to beef up, kid. We need you a little bit bigger, kid. You need to get a little bit more size on you, kid. And no kayfabe. I was told I need to take steroids. And they told me to take steroids. They told me to roid up, get bigger, and there's an opportunity for me to become something more than what I was at the time. And I'm not gonna lie, I'll be honest. I tried the roids. I tried the steroids for a minute, and I tried one cycle. I did one cycle, and I got a little bit more buff, a little bit cut or whatever and stuff. But I was like, there's so many question marks about it. I'm not going to damage my health and do it. And I'm not going to sacrifice my health for guys that want me to do it. Now, I have plenty of friends that did do it. You know, pimples on their backs all day. You know, I knew a lot of guys that was on that stuff, and they were gassed up. And these guys were like, you know, I've seen guys go from like 175 pounds to 250, 275, just hulks. And that's good for them. And I know some of those guys that just went on to become car salesmen and never became famous. But the one thing that I just decided, I was like, well, you know, I'm going to do my thing. And, you know, my end came when I did an indie show in the Irish Assassin. The Irish Assassin, who was like 6'3", 250 pounds of steroids in the battle royal. Me and him, the last two guys in the ring. My kid, who was like, I think 5 years old, sitting in the front row with his best friend and my friend. And me and the Irish Assassin, okay, we're going to do this. Louis Piccoli, Ricky Diataki. I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to throw Ricky out. You throw Louis out. And then when these guys are down on the ground and stuff, I'm going to hit you a chop, hit you a thing, whatever. And then you're going to pick me up and you're going to throw me. These guys will get up, they'll catch me. This fucking guy, we do it. I toss Ricky, I think, in here, and he tosses Louis. They're out. They fall over. Blah, blah, blah. Over the top rope. It's a battle royal. They're down. These guys get up. They're getting ready for the spot. They're ready to fucking catch me. And Irish Assassin, bam, I hit him on the chop. Boom, I hit him with a kick. I round him to the ropes, and he reverses it. He picks me up like freaking Ultimate Warrior, press slam. He's supposed to just toss me over the ring, over the ropes, and those guys catch me. He ran full force through me. I landed in the second row. That was my last match, and I think it was in 95, 94, 95. That was it. I was done. Bad back, spinal stenosis. All those things come later. But yeah, after that, my back was jacked up. I said, that's it. I'm just doing the radio. And at the time, I think I was doing radio still at the time. I started radio. 93, 94, stories to be told. There's stories to be told in the ring, and there's guys that put in the work in the ring. There's guys that have injuries in the ring. But when it comes to Vince McMahon, it was telling his own story the way he wanted to. He got into character, he stayed into character, and he never got out of character. And Hulk Hogan, I will just say this. If someone shows you who they are who they are. And Hogan was that guy. And I will say this. My first big interview when I transitioned into radio was with Hulk Hogan, WCW, Jody Hamilton, and Zane Bresloff. Those were guys. One of the guys who promoters, one of the guys that does marketing, media, and stuff. And WCW says, "Okay, kid, we're gonna set you up." Blah blah blah. He's gonna be at the what's that? Hollywood Records, that record store in Hollywood. Signing autographs. And this was Hogan's going straight to WCW. This was like big. This was huge and stuff. So and during that time, it was like I was so engulfed into my character and the Shadow, and I was just fresh off of still wrestling and not fully transitioned to. I was still Shadow Man, and I was not Shadow at the time. Shadow Man was my kayfabe character. I stayed in character, so I wore part of my wrestling gear when I went to interview Hogan. Now this was in the early '90s. And when I went there, and there was a line across the thing and stuff, they walked me up, and I had my mic and stuff, and he says, "Who are you supposed to be, brother?" I was like, "Shadow from the radio show Square Circle, so on stuff." "Yeah, that's great, brother." And it's just the vibe, the move, the swing, the feeling of like someone really kind of just make you feel like a nothing and a nobody in just a matter of 60 seconds was the thing that really stamped into my heart. And at that, excuse my French, but at that fucking moment, I said, no more Shadow Man. Never gonna be Shadow Man ever again. I'm not doing this shit no more. I thought because old school, you're supposed to stay in character and never come out of character and never expose the business. And so at that time when I did it, I was in character and I was staying in character. I was too far engulfed into my character to where when I met Hogan, who was wearing his bandana and his fucking t-shirts and his red bands and all of that crap that he wears, and I come in and I show up in my stuff and he says, "Who are you?" and looked at me like I was a piece of crap. Still did the interview. I got the interview. I got tapes and saying Hulk Hogan promote my radio show and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. But after that point, then t-shirts, blue jeans, and my bandana thing that says Shadow on it, whatever that was. But that was it for me moving forward after that. And I never changed after that. And I just became myself. I decided to just be Shadow, not Shadow Man. And I think that that's one of the things where Vince McMahon never came out of his character, where Hulk Hogan never came out of his character. And Hulk Hogan has always been the same person he has been. And, you know, and it's sad to say, and you kind of think about this on a level when it comes to other people in that business and in that industry, in the WWE, in that era, when you looked at the McMahon thing. Junkyard Dog died from an overdose in Las Vegas. Yep. You don't hear much about JYD. Why? Because the way he died, what have you. But I will, if you can look it up, you can Google it, you can do your research on it. Junkyard Dog was the second most popular guy in wrestling in the 80s. He was the number 2 draw in the World Wrestling Federation. He sold the most merchandise under Hogan in the World Wrestling Federation. He had a song in the top 10 charts, Grab Them Cakes, in the 80s. So you can't tell me he wasn't popular, because if you look it up, his song was in the top charts, music charts. First time ever. Hogan's song was not in the top 10. Junkyard Dog was. That's how popular he was. He never got his big match. Yeah. Well, Hogan never gave him a match.
We knew that.
Vince, he was the mid card, the undercard, the right under the main event on some level. He wore the dog collar and the chain and all that kind of crap. But just point being, generic, organically, he was the second top draw in the WWE. and he hasn't been given the credit it was due. And if he was given that opportunity for a title match back then, I don't think he would end up where he was, broke and on drugs.
Mm.
I think it'd be a different story. And you can say that about a lot of guys in the industry, man.
Absolutely. But let's be honest though. You know, the thing that I think that makes um Hogan so much of a more vicious part of the storyline is, again, the man's very selfish. And when
Selfish.
you look at the one angle from this is that Randy Savage had a problem with him.
Yeah.
How many people behind the scenes had problems with Hogan? How many people have had those stories? And I know that the Undertaker has a podcast, and he says some things and some situations when he wrestled Hogan at WrestleMania. And there's a lot of things that Hulk Hogan has to look back at himself and take an inner look, because his story's not going to be good. And
Right.
it's the same exact way for, like, like when now with Vince McMahon. The end of his story is not good. He can talk about all the stuff about his father and the rest of these situations and all these things that happened in his life, and these are what they call excuses, because you're not a product of where you came from. You're not a product of who you're born from. You're a product of who you become.
Yeah.
And he was the kind of guy that, like I said, like you said, he was very misogynistic. He was, if it didn't matter who he had to screw over, as long as business was good, that's all he cared about. And now is what they call in this world, and I'd like everyone to remember this, it's called karma. Because
Yeah.
the situation now is, well, guess who's getting screwed over? Guess who's gotten kicked out of W? And I'll be honest with you, from every portion that TKO should do, they should get rid of anybody that had association with McMahon, anybody that's ever had a name McMahon, and
Well,
I think they need to get rid of everyone associated, get a clean break, and get rid of some of this ugliness and some of these things, because the one thing that they did do in the documentary, and it kind of glanced over it, but not as bad, is they did a lot of that behind the scenes stuff that happened with the boys and how you got up on the
right.
upper card. And we're not going to go into totally that
Look,
part, but there's some names that was mentioned in situations that was done with ring boys, and I was like, okay, but they still. This is not a hard hitting. This was not like CNN did this documentary, because they didn't take out all the ugly stuff. They just brought enough in to give you a little point of thinking that they know, and then they glanced upon it.
well, look, I'm like I said, no kayfabe. I'm gonna shoot.
No,
And this is the one thing where it wasn't just Vince. It was Vince, but I mean it was more in the industry. There was a club and in wrestling era, and no one's ever mentioned this. I don't think anyone's ever said this and publicly. And but there was a club. There was a club that the wrestlers had, and this goes back to the '80s and maybe even the '70s. It was called the Suplex Club.
okay,
Suplex Club was guys on the road hook up with groupies or hook up with whoever or whatever, and there was things done.
mm,
And that was just part of the business because you're on the
yeah,
road, you're not home, you do your thing or whatever and stuff.
yeah,
So the Suplex Club was real. And it was a private club for only a certain guy, certain set of guys, and certain set of the
mm,
boys. But just like there was the Suplex Club, Vince McMahon had his own thing. Everyone's
of
heard the
course,
stories about Pat Patterson. Everyone
everybody,
knows.
yeah,
Everyone. It's not like it was a secret. Pat Patterson. You had to go into Pat Patterson's office in order to get a push. And there were some boys that just had to do things. Look, the Diddy stuff is out. So Pat
yeah,
Patterson's stuff is no secret. You had to sit on Pat Patterson's couch. That's all as far as I'll go as far as describingly.
yeah.
Ultimate Warrior was not a great talent. Ultimate
No, he
Warrior
was not.
was not, he just didn't get all of it in wrestling and didn't care about wrestling. He was a bodybuilder from California. Matter of fact, Bill and Jesse trained him and Sting. So there was one that was into wrestling and one that just wanted to become famous because he couldn't make it as a bodybuilder. He was on too many steroids. But Ultimate Warrior, we've all heard stories of,
Mm.
had to go into Pat Patterson's office. And then all of a sudden, Ultimate Warrior becomes champion. Hulk Hogan, all I can say is what I know, and all I can say is Hogan got what he want when he wanted it, and yes, Vince, and they showed how, oh wow, he became a huge star, and how Vince made him into this huge
Mhm.
star, and everything and stuff. And then Hogan was able to write his own story, meaning he had creative control over what he did and didn't do most of his career, and his time and era in WCW, all of that kind of stuff. But here's the thing that hasn't changed and never changed, and that's just why I feel like what you said. TKO should never bring Hogan back. They should never
Yeah.
give Hogan any TV time ever and let that dude fade off into the sunset. You've already put him in the Hall of Fame. You've already done all that stuff. Time's
Hmm.
up, time's done. They talked about Benoit and everything, right? And we'll
Glance
never
over it.
see it. Yeah, but we'll never see Benoit in a Hall of Fame or
No,
anything and stuff.
never.
He was a great worker. He was a fantastic worker. He was one of the best workers in this industry. I've interviewed him, but for whatever reason, he lost it, and he did some really terrible thing to his family. And that's a damn shame. That's sad. That's a travesty. Unforgivable. Hogan has done some unforgivable things, and he's
Yeah,
even said he's like, people forgive Benoit. People don't forgive Benoit.
you
People,
haven't.
people, people respect what Benoit was in the ring and what he did in the ring, but no one will ever forgive someone killing their family. No,
Yeah,
ever. But
yeah.
can someone forgive someone that's a racist, that drops the N word? His All American beer wants it to be this brand that does not represent any other race than his own?
Well,
Someone that has been caught on video, audio, calling, dropping the N word, won't let his daughter date any of these guys.
here's the aspect that I'll tell you too, who will also absolutely in every possible way an absolute showman because he was the only one that had his own stupid gear on promoting. I think it was his restaurant or his surf shop or some other crap. And I noticed that that was predominantly him in there just being a shameless plug, like he is. The man has zero credibility and
Zero.
you have to move on at a certain portion. You got to move on from the McMahon era. You need to put on. You say, yeah, hey man, what you did in the '80s and the '90s, it was great. Get the hell out of here. Now we actually have people, and you've got to have a sense of that people are in that organization. They understand the global dominance that they have now, and the views, especially moving to Netflix, and you get rid of some of those embarrassments. You get
Yeah.
rid of the Pat Pattersons. You get rid of the Hogans. You get rid of some of these guys that are they can't. You, I don't think you bring back Brock Lesnar. I think you got to cut ties with some of these guys, and you've got to bring in an era where people have to understand this is a business, and you need to act accordingly
Yeah.
and
And
just move on from this old stuff.
agreed. And here's the thing, and this is why it's like I'm not just going negative on Hogan just cause.
Yeah.
I'm going negative on Hogan because of the legacy that he left, like
Hmm.
the say your prayers, train hard, eat your vitamins, all that kind of stuff. Facade. When it comes to in ring, when it comes to the business, what he did for the business, what he did for the business, and what he did for the boys. There's a big difference, which you got fanboys that do podcasts. You
Yep.
got fanboys and marks that do podcasts that will say, "Oh, Hogan was one of the best ever, sold most merchandise, blah blah blah." What you do for the business and what you do for the boys are two different things. And this is the one thing that bothered me about Hogan. And on Square Circle, I would always lay that out for years. I wasn't like, oh, hyping up Hogan because I was doing promotions with WCW. It was just one
Hmm.
simple factor. I brought up Junkyard Dog. I brought him up for a reason. At
Yeah.
some point, Hulk Hogan, during that era, could have done some more for Junkyard Dog. Do matches with him, do a match, or whatever it was. That was a different time and era. Fine. Jesse Ventura tried to start a union.
Yep.
Hogan already said he whistle blew for the boys. Second, who killed WCW?
Mm. Well,
You can say the execs at TNT at Turner. You can say Bischoff. You can say a lot of things. It comes down to one very simple fucking thing, and that's just the reason why WWE has NXT, to build new stars. Hogan never put anyone over. Hogan never helped anyone become a big star. You could say, oh, when he turned and then Sting, he didn't make Sting. Sting
Sting
made
was already
Sting.
made. Yep.
Sting became the
Yep.
Crow. Sting did the character and gimmick. Sting was popular like John Cena was. And Sting was, well, before John Cena was, but Sting was a popular wrestler. When he turned Crow, which was that gray area thing, he made himself. The one thing I will say is this fucking guy couldn't even put Sting over clean after a year of promotion. The fans waited for that payoff. And it was a screw job finish. What the? When you have a match that you built for an entire year, and it's time to pay the fans off or to deliver to the fans, it's supposed to be a clean finish. Plain and simple. Everybody knew that. Everybody knew that. Hogan had creative control. He decided how to go. And they weren't even sure if he was going to put Sting over. Booker T, he even said it. He wasn't sure if he was going to win a WCW title because Hogan was first saying next that. No. That's Hogan.
Yeah.
That's what Hogan was to the boys. That's what Hogan was. And
selfish,
he didn't know who the hell I was, and he didn't know. It is just the point of it. It's just like, this guy didn't give a shit about anybody but himself, and he still doesn't. And that's the end of the story for that kid. I'm done with him. I hope WWE never brings him back. And I hope we never see this guy again and he can fade off into the sunset just like he didn't give a shit about all the other guys that faded off into the sunset that could have even possibly had a union to where they didn't die of smoking crack or being on drugs or ODing in a hotel. Like, again, come back to Dave Meltzer. Talk about all this crazy shit, all the stuff that this dude talk about. It's like, dude, you don't know these guys. Louis Spicoli, Eddie Guerrero. I know these guys. I knew these guys. Louis Spicoli was a good friend of mine. And here's the thing. You didn't touch on the real things. You didn't touch on the real subjects. You didn't go deep into the things that really mattered. You just touched on things that you wanted to express as a fucking fanboy. And that's the problem I have with the Dave Meltzers of the world. And the guy said, look, I'll say this. Vince Russo, I've seen his podcast and I see what he does and stuff. And like, he's an insider because he's worked in the business. He's written wrestling television. So he kind of knows how to produce segments in entertainment. But he don't know fuck about wrestling either.
Yeah. Well,
look, I respect the guy for being able to create some interesting and entertaining moments in the wrestling. But he was also a reason why WCW failed.
Yeah.
You don't know wrestling, bro. Simple as that. So, it's a lot that can be said. We could go on for forever and ever and stuff.
These guys happen to be interesting enough and pieces of crap enough where we can continue on and on and on. But first of all, if you got to this point, make sure that you do the things that we need you to do. Like, comment, but most definitely subscribe. Let us know what you're thinking about the event. We're going to move on to end up the show where we're going to run down a question. This was up on that was in the comment section that somebody wanted. And we're not going to name names here because we don't do that kind of stuff. But it says, all right, it says, I know you filmed one of your episodes 5 months ago. And so hopefully you can answer this question in the future. You touched upon finishes and how a good finish should be for any person's size or weight. Mr. Perfect had the perfect plus. This was a move that is done that you would think would be only for a certain sized individual. But how did he do this against the Giant? I would just want to know what your thoughts is on this, Shadow.
Well, as far as how or that finish in itself, that's a fantastic finish. It's one of the best finishers in the industry. The key thing about it is the perfect plex is a suplex. It's a fisherman superplex because you grab the leg. So if no matter what size that person is, if you hook their head and then you can grab their leg and their arm is hooked here, you give basically a tug, and your tug is not you lifting them, it is
Uh-huh.
them boosting off and coming over back. So
Okay.
it's a boost and back. So that person that you've got in that move, whether they're 100 pounds or 300 pounds, they're pushing themselves off and over, and then they have their hand on your hip to push themselves off so that they can
Mm.
take the bump over your head. And all you're doing is guiding them. You're kind of like a sling. You're slinging them up, but they're pushing off as well to go with you backwards.
Got it.
And that's why that's a great finisher, one.
Hmm.
And two, you can do it on anybody. There's guys that have finishers that are trash because it's like, you can't do this to everyone. Like CM Punk, I used to hate his thing, but he's in shape and he was in shape
Yeah.
to take Drew McIntyre and do his go to sleep, which is
Yeah.
he did it like 3 or 4 times in that match, which I was impressed because normally CM Punk is struggling to get some big guy up and then do that.
Mhm.
Take him. You're talking about getting a guy on your shoulder and then get him over your head and then come up. That's a difficult move. And
It
I will
is.
say this
It is.
last thing on that and on
Mhm.
finishers in itself is
Yeah.
this. Guys, when it's two different companies or whatever, there's a respect in the business, in the back. The boys respect other guys. You don't steal moves unless you have the
Sure.
permission to do other people's moves. And you don't take people's finishers and you add it to your repertoire. It
Hmm.
dilutes the product. Super kicks used to be knockout. When Shawn Michaels made it his, no one else could do it because that was his finisher.
Yeah.
People take uh the Mr. Perfect Plex. They take it now. That's just another move now. That's the
Yeah.
problem with this industry now. Is like these fucking guys in AEW, they use like 2, 3, 4 different finishers in a match.
Yeah.
And everyone's kicking out of shit. If everyone kicks out of shit, there is no fucking finisher. And then the worst part about it is that their finisher is trash. It's like literally the Young Bucks finisher, the knees to the face. They do all these big, huge, high fly moves, all these crazy moves and stuff. People kick out of, but and then you're out.
Yeah.
Your finisher
Yeah.
does not sell it to be a finish, and that's the problem in this industry. I'm sorry. Okay, next question.
Hey, that's what we want, man. In fact, we should do. We should devote an episode on the best finishers of all time. But I will say that Mr. Perfect, God rest his soul. If there was ever a person that was one of the best technical wrestlers out there, that man was.
Yeah.
And it's Mr. Perfect every time. Look, just from his charisma to his entrance to the other. I love all the little back in the days his promos. You know,
Oh yeah.
he was the affinity, and they touched on that in the Mr. Mcmahon special very slightly, and that and ravishing Rick Rude, and somehow some of these unfortunate gentlemen passed away very early. And
Yeah.
again, I thought Mr. McMahon was a pup piece, but it seemed as if there was a tad bit of disrespect because they glanced over people's deaths and their untimely demises,
Yeah.
and they just kind of you didn't get the full story. You got mostly Mr. McMahon's story, and that's not what it should have been because he's so influential in other lives. But as usual, Shadow, we're
Yeah.
hitting it hardcore right here on
Yeah.
the Shadow Knows Network. And
Yeah.
again, like we keep telling you, if you want to see Shadow with the content and also touch upon the things is that when I tell people all the time about the Shadow shoot shot, people don't understand number one our history, but number two is that it's like there's good days Shadow have, there's bad days Shadow have. So whenever we can get him involved in the podcast, it is the thing that is the underlying issue for our actual network. We love to have him come in, his knowledge and everything. He's always a forefront person. And, again, just you bringing up your issues and situations like that is just remarkable, man, because people, I know people always say, like, well, wrestling's this and wrestling's that and everything. You, People are athletes, and athletes have damages done to them over the years. And all we can do is just thank these individuals for putting their bodies on the line for entertaining us. So thanks,
Yeah.
Shadow. It's always a
Yeah.
pleasure, brother.
I appreciate that, Mr. Storm. I really do. And I just say this: it's like, yeah, this was probably a very emotional and animated
Hmm.
episode, but it is just a point of, you know, frustration level, and this is one of the reasons why it's like you brought me back, and one of the reasons why I
Yes,
wanted to
sir.
come back was
Yeah.
because you see guys online doing all these podcasts, in which I've gotten a lot of feedback throughout the years and emails and messages from people that says I started my podcast because of you and your show, which I'm very touched by that, and I'm glad that people are doing this now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you want people to, like be real about stuff. Like talk about what you know. Don't
Yeah.
talk about what you don't know. And it's like you can say, I don't like this match and give your
Yeah.
reasons why, but you can't disrespect the wrestlers and what they do, and then when it comes to guys like a Meltzer, where everyone believes on some levels, like he is the gospel of wrestling. He has a Bible of wrestling. His Wrestling Observer was that. No, it wasn't. It was rumors and everything. I shared some things that I've never shared before, like the suplex clubs and stuff like that. So, but this
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
stuff I know. You know what I mean? This is not stuff that I call or on somebody just to get fucking news and information from. So it's take it from where you get it. When you listen to Bischoff's podcast, you can see that he's talking about stuff that he knows. When you listen to Vince Russo, he's talking about stuff that he knows. When you listen to Bully Ray, he's talking about stuff he knows.
Yeah.
But when you listen to like some of these other guys, it's just like, man, you know, don't, I'm giving a lot of energy to it, and I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's like I've been out for weeks because
Yeah.
I couldn't walk, I couldn't move, I couldn't do a lot of things because of the blood, sweat, and tears that I put into this industry. So it's like it just gets very frustrating when you listen to guys. So I'll just say this to the wrestling fans: tune in, tell your friends, check out the Shadow. You like it or you don't like it. You want to leave messages and stuff. We'll try to respond to them and give you answers and feedbacks on it. You got questions about wrestling in itself, it's cool. I wish Jesse Ventura was successful in creating, a union so that wrestlers could have had insurance, wrestlers could have had, pensions and stuff like that, or 401s and stuff like that and stuff. There was Lloyd's of London, but that was when you made it and you could afford Lloyd's of London.
Yeah.
But that's a whole nother story, a whole nother day and stuff. But it's just sad when you think about Junkyard Dog, Louis Spicoli, Eddie Guerrero, so many other guys, that just passed
Yeah.
away when it could have been prevented.
Yeah.
So, hey, we only can express. But for next week, next time, next episode is gonna be fun. We're just gonna talk about fun stuff. We're gonna mix it up. We're gonna talk about wrestling. We're gonna talk about comic books. We're gonna talk about toys, action figures, and all that stuff. So tune into Pixel Plastic and Inks on Fridays. Tune into Toybox Chronicles on Wednesdays. Tune into the Shadow Nose Network, and then tune into the
Absolutely.
Shadow Shoe Shot. Yeah,
Absolutely.
Till next time, tune in if you got the guts.